Did you ever think dodgeball was dangerous? Could your childhood games have killed you in medieval times? Would you survive a medieval playground? Number 9. Hot Cockles, slap and guess. Ever let someone hit you for fun? Medieval kids did. Hot Cockles was a popular game where one child would kneel or lay their head in another player's lap, covering their eyes. The kneeling player would then extend one hand behind their back, palm up. Other players would take turns slapping the extended hand, and the kneeling player had to guess who hit them. If they guessed correctly, they would switch places with the slapper. This seemingly simple guessing game had a darker edge to it. The slaps were often far from gentle, with some historical accounts suggesting that players would hit with considerable force. Children played this game across Europe, from England to France, where it was known as la main show, the hot hand. It remained popular through the medieval period and survived well into the Renaissance, even becoming a fashionable parlor game among adults. Paintings and illuminated manuscripts from the 14th and 15th centuries show children and adults alike engaged in hot cockles, suggesting it transcended age barriers. The game taught children about pain endurance, quick thinking, and voice recognition, all potentially useful skills in medieval society. While modern parents might be horrified at a game centered around hitting, medieval ideas about childhood toughness were quite different from our own. Number 8. Hoodman Blind, the dangerous predecessor to blindman's buff. What happens when you combine a blindfold with no safety regulations? Hoodman Blind, the medieval version of blindman's buff that certainly lived up to its reputation for causing chaos. In this game, one child would be blindfolded or hooded and spin around several times before attempting to catch the other players, who would tease and provoke the hoodman. Unlike today's controlled versions, medieval Hoodman Blind had virtually no boundaries or safety considerations. Children played in fields with open wells, near riverbanks, or in forests with plenty of obstacles. The blindfolded player could easily stumble into danger, which was part of the thrill. Historical records from 13th century England mention incidents of children being injured during particularly rowdy games. The blindfolded player often carried a stick to swing around, adding another element of danger. Other players would dart in to tap or touch the hoodman before jumping away, often taunting with rhymes like "Hoodman, Hoodman, where wast thou born? Far beyond the sea, and there blows the horn." Despite or perhaps because of these dangers, the game's popularity endured for centuries. References appear in Shakespeare's works, including Hamlet, showing how deeply embedded the game was in cultural consciousness. For medieval children, the risk was part of the appeal, something that modern bubble-wrapped childhoods rarely allow for. Number 7. Quoits, the ring-tossing game that claimed fingers. Imagine a game so dangerous, it regularly led to missing fingers. Welcome to medieval quoits, a deceptively simple ring-tossing game with serious consequences. Children would throw heavy metal rings toward a stake driven into the ground, attempting to ring it. Points were scored when the ring encircled the stake. What made quoits particularly perilous was the weight and construction of the rings themselves. Unlike modern plastic rings, medieval quoits were often made of iron, weighing anywhere from 1 to 5 pounds. When thrown with force, these metal projectiles could cause serious damage, particularly when children's fingers got in the way of a flying quoit or between a quoit and the stake. Church records from 14th century England document complaints about children playing quoits in churchyards, citing both the noise disturbance and the number of injuries. One parish near York recorded treating 3 children in a single summer for mangled fingers got through the devil's rings, as one disapproving priest called quoits. Despite these hazards, quoits was embraced across social classes. Peasant children fashioned rings from rope or wood if metal wasn't available, while nobility had specially crafted sets. Archaeological digs have uncovered quoits in medieval household ruins throughout Europe, confirming the game's widespread popularity. For medieval children, the risk of injury was simply part of growing up in a world that hadn't yet invented safety standards. Number 6. Stoolball, cricket's violent ancestor. Did you know the genteel game of cricket began as a potentially concussion-causing medieval children's game? Stoolball, popular from the 12th century onward, had a simple premise but painful execution. Players would place a milking stool upside down, and one player, the batsman, would defend it with a stick or their hand while others threw a small hard ball, attempting to hit the stool. The ball used in Stoolball was nothing like today's cushioned sports equipment. Often made from leather stuffed with rags, hair, or even pebbles, a direct hit could leave serious bruises or worse. When defending with bare hands, children regularly suffered broken fingers. If using a batting stick, wild swings frequently led to accidental hits on fellow players. Stoolball was particularly popular during Easter celebrations, with entire village communities joining in games that could grow quite rowdy. The 13th century Bishop of Winchester attempted to ban the game after witnessing children and laborers alike returning home bloodied from their Easter Stoolball matches. His prohibition had little effect as the game continued to flourish. Young girls played Stoolball as commonly as boys, making it one of the more gender-balanced medieval sports. The game evolved over centuries, gradually becoming less dangerous and eventually splitting into cricket and baseball. Archaeological evidence of Stoolball includes worn milking stools with impact marks and writings from medieval chroniclers who both praised the game's skill requirements and lamented its tendency to cause injury. Number 5. Knucklebones, gambling from an early age. What game taught medieval 5-year-olds to gamble? Knucklebones, the ancient game that predated medieval times but found enthusiastic adoption among medieval children. Originally played with actual animal knucklebones, typically sheep or goat, the game involved tossing and catching these small bones in increasingly complex patterns. Beyond the basic dexterity challenge, knucklebones quickly evolved into a gambling game for children. They would bet prized possessions, a piece of string, a smooth pebble, or perhaps a saved crust of bread, on their ability to complete difficult throws. Archaeological digs at medieval school sites have uncovered caches of knucklebones, sometimes with marks indicating they were used as counting devices for scoring. The church frequently condemned knucklebones for introducing children to gambling, with one 14th century sermon likening the game to the devil's training for future sins of dice and cards. Despite religious opposition, the game was so embedded in daily life that it continued unabated. It transcended class boundaries. Peasant children used actual bones, while wealthy children might have carved ivory versions. Parents had mixed reactions to the game. Some encouraged it for developing hand coordination, while others worried about the gambling aspect. Medieval physicians sometimes recommended knucklebones as therapy for children recovering from illness, as it required minimal movement while engaging the mind. The game's constant presence in medieval childhood created generations of children comfortable with risk assessment and gambling concepts from an early age. Number 4. Camp Ball, the no-rules football frenzy. Could you imagine a football game with no boundaries, teams of unlimited size, and virtually no rules? That was Camp Ball, the chaotic medieval predecessor to soccer and rugby that often engulfed entire villages. While adults certainly participated, children were eager participants in these massive, often violent games. Camp Ball typically involved attempting to move a ball, usually an inflated pig's bladder, to a goal, which might be a church door in one village and a mill in another. With distances sometimes exceeding a mile and natural obstacles like rivers and woods in the playing field, the game could last all day. Teams could include dozens or even hundreds of players, with children as young as 6 joining the fray. The lack of rules made Camp Ball extraordinarily dangerous. Historical records describe broken limbs, concussions, and even occasional fatalities. One account from 1321 tells of a game in Norwich where 2 boys were trampled so severely they did not rise again, leading to a temporary local ban. These bans were common. More than 30 royal edicts attempted to prohibit or limit Camp Ball between 1200 and 1500, all with limited success. For children, Camp Ball was both a thrilling adventure and a formative social experience. It taught them village geography, physical endurance, and community allegiance. Young players who showed skill gained status even among adults. Archaeological evidence of camp ball includes preserved pig bladders found in medieval middens and town records documenting property damage from particularly raucous games. Despite its dangers, camp ball persisted because it offered medieval children something they craved: unbridled, adrenaline-fueled freedom. Number 3. Cherry Pit, the choking hazard game. Would modern parents let their children play with hundreds of small choking hazards? Medieval parents didn't think twice about Cherry Pit, a game that used exactly what its name suggests: the pits from cherries. After enjoying the fruit, children would clean and save the pits for this popular pastime that combined precision tossing with gambling. The basic game involved tossing cherry pits into small holes in the ground, with points awarded for successful throws. Variations included trying to knock opponents' pits out of a circle or tossing pits into cups from increasing distances. Children often wagered on these games, betting more cherry pits or small treasures on the outcomes. What made Cherry Pit particularly hazardous wasn't just the choking risk for very young children. The competitive nature often led to disputes, with historical court records showing occasional serious fights breaking out over Cherry Pit games. One 1385 coroner's report from London documents a fatal stabbing between two 12-year-old boys after an accusation of cheating at Cherry Pit. The game was especially popular during summer when cherries were in season. Wealthy children sometimes had specially carved ivory or bone pits to play with year-round. Archaeological excavations of medieval schoolyards and house sites frequently uncover caches of cherry pits with unusual wear patterns consistent with having been used as gaming pieces. Despite occasional accidents and disputes, Cherry Pit remained a beloved pastime that taught medieval children dexterity, mathematics for keeping score, and negotiation skills, albeit with a risk that would make modern parents shudder. Number 2. Hoops and Hooks, the street game of danger. Have you ever tried running full speed down a cobblestone street while guiding a wooden hoop with a metal hook? Medieval children did this routinely in the popular game of hoops, despite the predictably high injury rate. Using discarded barrel hoops or purpose-made wooden circles, children would propel their hoops through village streets, racing each other or performing tricks. The metal hook or stick used to control the hoop was itself a hazard, with its pointed end occasionally causing puncture wounds when children inevitably collided. Medieval medical texts mention treating eye injuries from hoop hooks with alarming frequency. The uneven streets of medieval towns added another layer of danger, with children frequently falling onto hard cobblestones or into open sewage channels that lined many streets. Civic authorities repeatedly tried to restrict hoop rolling to certain areas. A 1409 London ordinance prohibited the driving of hoops by children in any street or lane, upon pain of imprisonment, though enforcement proved nearly impossible. Some towns designated specific play areas for hoops, creating perhaps the first playgrounds, though most children ignored these restrictions. Despite the risks, hoops offered medieval children rare independent mobility. Skilled hoop rollers could travel quickly through crowded streets, making the game particularly useful for messenger children or those running errands. Archaeological evidence includes preserved wooden hoops and metal hooks found in medieval household waste sites across Europe. Illuminated manuscripts often depict children with hoops, showing how integral the activity was to medieval childhood despite, or perhaps because of, its perfect combination of speed, skill, and danger. Number 1. Battledore and Shuttlecock, the high-impact predecessor to badminton. What happens when you give children wooden paddles and tell them to hit objects at each other? Medieval parents found out through battledore and shuttlecock, the surprisingly dangerous precursor to modern badminton. Using wooden battledores, paddles, and shuttlecocks made from cork and feathers, children would hit the shuttlecock back and forth, trying to keep it airborne. Unlike today's regulated badminton, medieval battledore had no net and no clearly defined court. Players stood as close or far apart as they wished, often in crowded streets or markets. The battledores themselves were essentially flat wooden weapons, much heavier and harder than modern rackets. Accidental and sometimes intentional hits with these wooden paddles could cause serious injuries. The shuttlecocks presented their own hazards. Medieval versions typically used duck or goose feathers stuck into a base made of cork or tightly bound wool. These materials harbored bacteria and parasites, occasionally spreading disease among players. The pointed cork end could cause eye injuries when shuttlecocks were missed or deliberately aimed at faces. Despite these risks, battledore and shuttlecock appears across medieval art and literature from the 13th century onward. The game's popularity transcended class boundaries. Peasant children used crude wooden paddles while nobility enjoyed finely carved battledores with decorative inlays. References to the game appear in household accounts from royal courts, showing that even princes played this sometimes perilous pastime. Could you imagine letting your children play these games today? Would modern children even want to try these dangerous medieval pastimes? Are we protecting our children too much, or were medieval parents simply unconcerned with safety?